We're picking up today where we left off yesterday in the throne room of God. In the book of Revelation, chapter 4, we're starting with verse 3 here in just a moment. John has been taken, it says in verse 2, in the Spirit to the very throne room of God. And remember last time we mentioned that the word throne is found 45 different times in the book of Revelation. So it's a prominent teaching and understanding. God is ruling and reigning from his throne. And we find here in chapters 4 and 5, he is worshiped there. And this is a wonderful worship service. So we're joining John here, and we're looking at chapter 3. He has seen that there's one on the throne. And he says, behold, a throne was standing in heaven, in verse 2, and one sitting on the throne. Now, one sitting on the throne, as we'll see, is God the Father. And when we look at chapter 5, we see that what is prominent there, the personage prominent there, is God the Son. But that's for another day. Notice it is the Father on the throne. And in verse 3 it says, he who was sitting was like a jasper stone and a sardis in appearance. Now as we look at these metaphors, these pictures, notice the terminologies like the word like. John is trying to describe the indescribable. How do you describe a beautiful sunset? How do you describe something that is just gorgeous in our own nature? So if you think how difficult that is, think about trying to describe the glory and the splendor of God. And you understand the problem that John is dealing with. He's not saying that Jesus looks like a stone, even of any kind, but he is saying that the majesty and the glory and the beauty of the Lord stands out. And he's trying to describe that in some way. And he says also, and there was a rainbow around the throne like an emerald in appearance. We're not sure the purpose of that, except the predominant go-to in the book of Genesis concerning Revelation. We go all the way back to Noah's Ark, and after Noah gets off the ark and God puts up a rainbow as a promise that he would not yet again flood the earth. So a rainbow would represent his faithfulness to his own promise. And so perhaps that's the purpose here of the rainbow, a reminder of God's faithfulness to us. In verse 4, around the throne were 24 thrones, and upon the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white garments and golden crowns on their heads. So now we're starting to see some other creatures in heaven. Of course, God is God, but everything else are created beings, and we're looking at some of the most magnificent of these created beings as we work our way through this chapter. And the first group we run into is 24 elders who sit on 24 thrones. So we find, first of all, that whoever this group is, they have some form of authority. They're on thrones, and they're in the throne room of God. So that's pretty high authority. They're clothed in white garments and golden crowns on their heads. This is a little bit difficult then to know who this is. Perhaps a more traditional view is this is the church because of the elders, and also because in chapter 19 we find that the church as the bride of Christ is clothed in white garments. And also the Lord has given his people, according to the epistles, he gives rewards in the form of crowns. So these 24 elders could represent the church, and they are dressed in this way and have these crowns. But it also is possible it could be angels, because we have pictures in scriptures of angels being dressed in white garments as well. So that we'll have to leave that for a little later when we pick them up. But it says in verse 5, out from the throne came flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the thrones, which are the 7 spirits of God. So once again, we have another personage here, and that is the 7 spirits of God. We saw this 7 spirits of God back in chapter 1, verse 4, and we'll run into this several other times. Most people believe this is a picture of the Holy Spirit himself, that there is the Holy Spirit in the throne room, sent out, as we know from the book of John, chapters 14 to 16, by Christ. And the 7 is a picture of completion, and so we have the completion of perfection of the Godhead in the form of the Holy Spirit. So that's most likely what the 7 spirits are here. And he says, before the throne there was something like the sea of glass, like crystal, and in the center around the throne 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and behind. So we had now another group of creatures. These are 4 living creatures, And they're very interesting creatures. They're full of eyes, it says. And it says that concerning them in verse 7, the first creature was like a lion, the second like a calf, the third creature had a face like a man, and the fourth creature like a flying eagle. We find that very similar description in Ezekiel chapter 1 and verse 10, and that's cherubim there, and we have four faces there, and they're very similar. The only difference in Ezekiel is one of the faces there was a bull, and here's a calf, so it could be a young bull. And so that's a possibility. And each one of the four living creatures, each one had 6 wings, are full of eyes around and within. And so we now finish that description. That is a description very similar to the one we find in the book of Isaiah, when Isaiah came to the throne room, and we have seraphim that are flying. They have 6 wings. So these are probably some kind of majestic angelic beings, perhaps cherubim or seraphim or something else very similar. And these creatures are there. Well, we'll find out tomorrow what they're there for and why they're so important. So you join us tomorrow, and we'll pick it up right there. Thank you.